Welcome to First Do No Harm with Massachusetts Citizens for Life board member and physician Dr. Mark Rollo. This broadcast will focus on medical ethics from a Catholic perspective and address abortion, physician-assisted suicide, contraception, natural family planning, IVF, healthcare proxy, and other topics. Please be advised that this show may not be appropriate for children under 13.
Hello and welcome back to First Do No Harm, a show about medical ethics from a Catholic perspective. I'm Dr. Mark Rollo. The last show featured the concluding part of my interview with Kathy Rivet, a Creighton Model Method Natural Family Planning teacher and teacher of teachers, who has trained natural family planning practitioners all around the world. Today I will play part one of my interview with Barbara Meier, who is one of those practitioners taught by Kathy Rivet, and she is also a naprotechnology nurse and is therefore well-versed in naprotechnology, that's natural procreative technology, and the medical applications of the Creighton Model Natural Family Planning method, which can assist couples in treating a variety of problems. And specifically, it can help treat a variety of gynecological problems. Let us first begin, as always, with prayer. For as stated by the U.S. Catholic bishops, only with prayer that storms the heavens for justice and mercy, prayer that cleanses our hearts and souls, will the culture of death that surrounds us today be replaced with a culture of life. O God, you have formed us in your image of total gift of love. Please help us to live out your will of life-giving love. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen. Now, before getting to my interview with Barbara Meier, I would like to discuss an important document issued by the USCCB, that is, the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops. That document is the Ethical and Religious Directives for Catholic Healthcare Services. This can easily be found online by entering the title into your search engine, that is, the Ethical and Religious Directives for Catholic Healthcare Services. This document gives guidelines for Catholic healthcare institutions to render ethical services which are in conformity to the teaching of the Catholic Church. Likewise, this official paper gives guidance to individual Catholics or to anyone seeking ethical healthcare interventions based on natural law. The ERD's, Ethical and Religious Directives, has 6 parts, and today I will be focusing on Part 4, which deals with the issues in care for the beginning of life relevant to our recent discussions regarding contraception, abortion, artificial reproductive technologies such as IVF, and natural family planning. First of all, I would like to read part of the general introduction of the ERDs. It contains some beautiful scriptural references. It reads in part, "The Church has always sought to embody our Savior's concern for the sick. The gospel accounts of Jesus' ministry draws special attention to his acts of healing. He cleansed a man with leprosy. He gave sight to 2 people who were blind. He enabled one who was mute to speak. He cured a woman who was hemorrhaging. And he brought a young girl back to life." Indeed, the Gospels are replete with examples of how the Lord cured every kind of ailment and disease. In the account of Matthew, Jesus' mission fulfilled the prophecy of Isaiah. He took away our infirmities and bore our diseases. Jesus' healing ministry went further than caring only for physical affliction. He touched people at the deepest level of their existence. He sought their physical, mental, and spiritual healing. He came so that they might have life and have it more abundantly. So concludes the general introduction of the ERDs. Now, turning to Part 4 of the ERDs, Ethical and Religious Directives, it is entitled Issues in Care for the Beginning of Life. The introduction reads, "The Church's commitment to human dignity inspires an abiding concern for the sanctity of human life from its very beginning, and with the dignity of marriage and of the Marriage Act by which human life is transmitted. The Church cannot approve medical practices that undermine the biological, psychological, and moral bonds on which the strength of marriage and the family depends. Catholic healthcare ministry witnesses to the sanctity of life from the moment of conception until natural death. The Church's defense of life encompasses the unborn and the care of women and their children during and after pregnancy. The Church's commitment to life is seen in its willingness to collaborate with others to alleviate the causes of high infant mortality rate and to provide adequate health care to mothers and their children before and after birth. The Church has the deepest respect for the family, for the marriage covenant, and for the love that binds a married couple together. This includes respect for the Marriage Act, by which husband and wife express their love and cooperate with God in the creation of a new human being. The Second Vatican Council affirms this love is an eminently human one. It involves the good of the whole person. The actions within marriage by which the couple are united intimately and chastely are noble and worthy ones, expressed in a manner which is truly human. These actions signify and promote that mutual self-giving by which spouses enrich each other with a joyful and thankful will. The document goes on to say, marriage and conjugal love are by their very nature ordained toward begetting and educating of children. Children are really the supreme gift of marriage and contribute very substantially to the welfare of their parents. Parents should regard as their proper mission the task of transmitting human life and educating those to whom it has been transmitted. They are thereby cooperators with the love of God, the Creator, and are, so to speak, the interpreters of that love. For legitimate reasons of responsible parenthood, married couples may limit the number of children by natural means. The Church cannot approve contraceptive interventions that either in anticipation of the marital act or its accomplishment or in the development of its natural consequences have the purpose, whether as an end or a means, to render procreation impossible. Such interventions violate the inseparable connection willed by God between the two meanings of the conjugal act, the unitive and the procreative meaning. The introduction of Part 4 of the ERDs continues to state, with the advance of the biological and medical sciences, society has at its disposal new technologies for responding to the problem of infertility. While we must rejoice in the potential for good inherent in many of these technologies, we cannot assume that what is technologically possible is always morally right. reproductive technologies that substitute for the Marriage Act are not consistent with human dignity. Just as the Marriage Act is joined naturally to procreation, so procreation is joined naturally to the Marriage Act. As Pope John the 23rd observed, the transmission of human life is entrusted by nature to a personal and conscious act, and as such is subject to all the holy laws of God, the immutable and inviolable laws which must be recognized and observed. For this reason, one cannot use means that follow methods which could be listed in the transmission of life of plants and animals. The introduction of Part 4 of the ERDs concludes by stating, because the moral law is rooted in the whole of human nature, human persons, through intelligent reflection on their own spiritual destiny, can discover and cooperate in the plan of the Creator. Now, with that as background regarding marriage and conjugal love, I would like to play part 1 of my interview with Barbara Meier. With me now is Barbara Meier, who is a fertility care practitioner and naprotechnology nurse. So in other words, she teaches the most advanced form, the most advanced method of natural family planning, and she also helps implement the medical applications of natural family planning in a restorative way rather than in an artificial way. Barbara received her bachelor's in nursing at Florida State University, and I won't make her tell me what year that was. She then, interestingly, worked as a operating room nurse for many years before making her interesting career change. And along the way, Barbara and her husband, Mike, learned the symptothermal method of natural family planning. And then she and her husband went on to teach that for about 6 years until moving from New Jersey to beautiful Massachusetts. And it was then that I met Barbara, and she also met Dr. Paul Carpentier. And we had that mutual connection because Dr. Carpentier said, "Oh, you do simple thermal method? You should do Creighton model, the fertility care system." And she apparently said the same thing to Barbara. So, Barbara, did you do the training in Omaha, or did you do that closer to home?
Oh, no, I went out to Omaha.
Oh, you did?
It worked out. Yep, I went to the Mecca.
Yeah, you went to the Mecca, made the journey.
I did. It was worthwhile, though. It was a very good experience to go to the Pulse 6 Institute and
it was.
Learn from the founders.
Yeah. When I went, it was almost like going on retreat, but you were learning a lot of stuff too.
Totally.
So I was blessed to meet Barbara in 2010. She was looking to teach the Creighton model method, which had morphed into or changed its name to the fertility care system. And so I was blessed to work with Barbara from 2010 to 2018. And along the way, she also was working with Dr. Carpentier, who was practicing in nearby Gardner, Massachusetts. But he's now on Long Island, and that's where Barbara is spending her time, working with Dr. Carpentier as an instructor and as a NAPRO nurse. So I wanted to talk about various things with Barbara, her experience up here, her experience down there on Long Island. But I began this series of shows talking about Humanae Vitae. And I wonder you became aware of Humanae Vitae.
Well, we went to a gated encounter, and that's where one of the couples talked about natural family planning, and it seemed to make sense to me from a health
Mm-hmm.
perspective rather than from a faith perspective, but both.
Yeah.
So we decided that would be what we would do to space children in our marriage, and we began to learn that. But in the course on Couple to Couple League Taught, they did explain about Humanae Vitae, and it turns out Humanae Vitae is not a very large document.
Yes.
So we
That's
actually purchased it and read it in about 25 minutes. So
yeah. Yeah.
it was very enlightening, and it really struck me how prophetic it was,
Right.
because by the time I had learned about Humanae Vitae, a lot of the predictions that Pope Paul VI had made had already come true.
Right. And I actually spent the last few shows talking about the four prophecies of Humanae Vitae, and also talked about how he made a challenge to men of science, and I should say women too.
Right.
And so you took up the challenge along with many other people.
Right. And I think that was one of Dr. Hilger's, when he read it, it sounded like he was speaking right to him, and he started this whole thing with
Yeah.
the Creighton model system.
And I always
Yeah.
found that very admirable, because most OBGYNs ignored it. And I must say that initially I kind of disregarded Humanae Vitae, and it wasn't until I was in my medical training that I started paying attention to it.
Well, not too many Catholics that actually read papal encyclicals.
That's
I mean,
right.
it's just not how we spend, curl up with an encyclical or,
Right. Yeah. And
catechism.
Back in those days, we didn't have the internet. We couldn't easily find the document.
Exactly.
And well, tell me some of your experience in not only using symptothermal method, but also teaching it, and then how you made the transition to the Creighton model method, or the fertility care system, as we call it.
Sure. Well, using the symptothermal method was awesome. It's a very highly scientific method, as effective or more, depending on which study you look at, as Creighton model. So both of them are very, very accurate, more than 99%. Or 99% effective to avoid a pregnancy. So we started using that, and it worked perfectly for us. I mean,
Yes.
we got pregnant when we wanted to. We were able to avoid a pregnancy when we wanted to. And, we cannot promise these results at home, but for us, it worked 100% of the time.
Well, for my wife and me, it worked well, too.
Yeah. And then I met a lovely lady named Barbara Rose, who's now working at a Gianna Center in Philadelphia. And she teaches the Creighton model system, and I was curious. I was just intellectually curious, okay, about, there's two different systems. They're both claiming the same accuracy. Let's see how this works. So I called her and said, I'm already using one system, but I want to learn the other. And she's like, great. So I learned the Creighton model system and actually tracked both of those for several months until I was convinced that they were both telling me the same days that were fertile, same days that were infertile. And
a side-by-side comparison, huh?
Yeah. Always the scientist, gotta figure it out. Right. And once I was convinced that I didn't need to chart the temperatures, I was happy to do away with that. Some couples love having the temperature sign, others don't. For me, I was very, very happy to give that up. So moved forward with the Creighton model, and although the symptothermal model does look at cervical mucus sign, it's not as in-depth, and it's not as standardized as the Creighton model. So I appreciated that standardization and more objectivity according to that sign. So it worked great.
Yeah, and that's what appealed to me, especially in my medical practice, because, as you say, it was standardized, and so we were all talking the same language. You mentioned Gianna Center. Can you say a little bit about why it was called that? Did you work at a Gianna Center in Long Island, too?
Yes, I work for the Gianna Center for Women's Health and Fertility on Long Island. There are now 3 Gianna Centers with the Catholic health system down here. The first one was in Manhattan, and we're the second one here on Long Island in Suffolk County, and then we recently opened a third one in Nassau County in Rockville Center. So a Gianna Center basically is a women's health center that treats women in accordance with the ethical and religious directives of the Catholic Church.
Mm-hmm.
So you're not going to find birth control here. You're not going to have birth control pills. We're not going to be referring for IVF and things that a
Right.
Catholic would have to be on the alert for.
Right.
They can come and know that whatever we're offering is a safe and healthy alternative to that type of medicine.
Saint Gianna is the namesake. Do you want to say?
Oh, absolutely. Saint Gianna Beretta Molla was an Italian physician, actually 20th century, who lived a heroic life. She was a pediatrician, and she had, I think, 4 children. I forget how many children she had. She had several children,
right. Yeah.
something like that. Well, when she was pregnant with her youngest, was diagnosed with cancer, and was offered 3 alternatives. One was to take the treatment and hope for the best as far as the baby goes. One was to abort the baby and take the treatment. And the third was to wait until the baby was born and take the treatment. But in that case, she would most certainly die.
Yeah.
And that's the one she chose, and that is exactly what happened.
Yeah, so she was a very, very heroic person.
Absolutely. We were privileged to meet that baby, her daughter, who was also named Gianna. She came to Long Island a few years back and saw what we did. She likes what we're doing a lot.
Wow.
And
how old is she now?
She's about, I want to say 60.
Wow, that's pretty neat.
Yeah, something like that. And yeah, she actually gave us a relic, a sweater that belonged to her mother, and we have it framed and hanging in our office.
Cool. Well, I know you're currently busier than a one-armed paper hanger down there in Rhode Island, and because Dr. Carpentier is sort of the same way, and he'll be on a future show. But
wonderful.
Tell me what it's like working down there. What's your day like, and maybe tell us a couple of stories about clients, both from a teaching perspective and a medical perspective.
Okay, well, basically what I do is I help prepare the patients for their visit with the doctor. I gather the history and history that's anything that's happened between the last visit, and I gather all the lab data, et cetera, and present it to the doctor. So I do all the tedious work that way, so that the doctor has all the information right in front of him when he's talking to the patient. One of his biggest bugaboos is he does not want to be taking care of the computer when he's talking to the patient. So I get to take care of the computer, ask all the questions and dot all the I's and cross all the T's, and then he can sit down and have a better conversation and really find out what's on their mind. And he likes to spend a lot of time with them. So they're long visits. They're between me and the doctor, it's an hour long every time they come in. So we deal with a lot of different things, anything with women's health care. Infertility is a big issue here, polycystic ovarian syndrome, premenstrual syndrome, pelvic pain, menopause symptoms, lots of different things.
Yeah.
And depending on what's going on, he would recommend that they learn how to chart their cycles in order to help him diagnose and treat these things. Right. So lots of different people coming for different reasons. I will say that most of my clients are hoping to achieve a pregnancy, whereas I understand early on in the days of natural family planning, it's we don't even call it natural family planning anymore. We refer to it as fertility awareness-based methods of family planning. But in the early days, most of the people were learning it so they could avoid a pregnancy. But now, with infertility on the rise, many of our clients are trying to get pregnant and having difficulty.
Yes.
So,
and it's great to, I should say that I was, all of what you're talking about sounds very familiar because you did the same thing in my office until I retired. And I'll tell you what, I was trying to do all this by myself up until 2010. So when you joined me, it was terrific because you were able to kind of get all the ducks in a row and look at their chart, help interpret their chart, and it made practicing a lot easier for me. It is a very labor-intensive thing because infertility patients go through a lot of suffering. They have a lot of questions. And when you're going through the treatment from cycle to cycle, it takes a lot of conversation. It takes a lot of, and not only office visit, but a lot of time on the phone. And that was another reason why I was happy to have you, because you did most of the work on the phone with patients.
Time management is a huge priority.
Right.
And the infertility couples, like you were saying, it's very emotionally challenging as well as physically. So I've had patients tell me this is like a part-time job or a full-time job. Like, this is all I can think about.
Yeah.
I mean, some couples grow closer together, work really well as a team. They just jump over every hurdle and support each other well. Other couples are struggling and they're not in the same place and emotionally, and there's a little wedge that sometimes gets driven in between the two of them. So it's really helpful for the couples to know where you are on this journey, where they are, what are you thinking, and how to talk to each other about that.
This concludes part 1 of my interview with Barbara Meier. Tune in next time when you will hear some of her fascinating stories regarding the teaching of the Creighton model fertility care system, as well as the treatment of underlying problems such as infertility, which a woman's charting can help to uncover. And once uncovered, medical testing can then be done using the chart as a roadmap in order to further elucidate the disorder. After charting and testing, medical intervention can subsequently be undertaken in a completely ethical and restorative way in order to do what medicine should do: correct the underlying disease process. By contrast, artificial reproductive technologies such as IVF undertake the unethical, highly abortive approach, which disrespects the dignity of the marital act. Not only is the marital act bypassed, the underlying disease process is often ignored and bypassed in order to artificially create life while destroying life along the way. Next time, I will also have more to say about the ethical and religious directives of Catholic healthcare services as it relates to the care for the beginning of life. Until then, remember, we should always treat life with care and respect. And at the very least, we should first do no harm.
Thank you for tuning in to First Do No Harm. Dr. Rollo welcomes your questions and comments. You may contact him at markrollo978@gmail.com. That's MARKROLLO978@gmail.com. Thank you, and until next week, remember, first do no harm.